Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. So, back at the end of February, I was really lamenting the fact that I couldn't watch any anime award shows because I really like award shows. They're fun. Even if I've never watched the actual movies that are being nominated, I still think that award shows are fun to watch. There's a lot of hype with things and you want to see what wins, what gets voted as the most popular or the best, quote unquote. It's all very subjective. It's a lot of fun. And so back at the end of February, I was lamenting the fact that I couldn't really watch any anime award shows because I didn't want to get spoiled by any of the anime. So I decided that I wanted to combine two things that I like, which are award shows and March Madness, the NCAA basketball tournament in the United States. And so I decided I would do two different single elimination contests, the single elimination waifus and single elimination husbandos, because waifus and husbandos, we love them all, right? So it's taken me a good solid month to get to recording this because of things happening, but here we are, and it's only the end of March, so I'm definitely going to plan this a little bit ahead of time next year if I decide to do this again. But I had people on Patreon vote for their top waifus and top husbandos of 2022. So the criteria behind this is a little bit skewed because I asked that people voted for only waifus and husbandos from series that I have watched or manga that I have read. And so a lot of these choices are only based on those criteria. So I'm sure that when you see this bracket, when you see these choices for the top 64 that we're going to narrow in this video down to the top 32, you're probably going to be like, well, why wasn't this person on there? And why wasn't that person? If I've not seen the show or read the manga or watched the donghua or read the manhwa, that's why. So hopefully if I do this again next year, I'll have watched more and read more, and then we can expand even further and maybe get more people in the pool. That is the hope anyway. But I did a top 64 elimination bracket of waifus and husbandos that were voted for on Patreon, and then we had several polls to narrow down our choices. So luckily, by the time I got all of the waifu nominations in, I took out the ones that were accidentally entered from series I hadn't seen, and I miraculously ended up with 64 nominations. It was a February miracle. And then I did the husbandos and ended up with hundreds of different options. So we had to narrow it down, but through several Patreon polls and flash polls on there, we narrowed it down to 64. And so that's what we're going to look at today. So I was going to do this all in one round in one big giant video, do all the waifus in one video and all the husbandos in another video, but it was going to be too long. So I decided to narrow it down. So in this video, we're going to narrow down the top 64 waifu choices down to the top 32 and the top 64 husbando choices down to the top 32. And in the next video, we'll go even further, maybe down to the top 8 for each. And then we'll do a final video that will have the top 8 narrowed down to the winners of this year's top waifu and top husbandos of Romania Black's media that she has watched. So I went kind of all out with organizing this. I probably had more fun organizing this than I'm going to have talking about it, if I'm honest. No, it's going to be a lot of fun talking about it. I have my wonderful beverage. I'm ready to just chat and go through the criteria. But I basically took all of the different nominations and I seeded them like NCAA, where we have like the 1 seeds are in their corners and they're against the 16 seeds, and then we have like the 8th seed and the 9th seed and so on and so forth. So if you go look up NCAA basketball seeding, that's how I did it. So some of these rounds you would think were going to be really easy. They weren't, because I didn't want my personal bias to get in the way, because we all have waifus and husbandos that we like, right? And so to keep my bias in check, I did a handy dandy rubric, because teacher life. So that just seemed to make the most sense. So I did this rubric based on 5 criteria to hopefully be as unbiased as possible as we go through these top choices. And the rubric categories are attractiveness. Spoiler alert, most of these are going to fit that criteria because y'all nominated them to be husbandos and waifus. So that was an easy one. Loyalty or love, because they're husbandos and waifus. They're partners. They should have loyalty or love towards you as their significant other. Stability. This was a good deciding factor. How stable are they as a husbando and waifu? Personality. What's their personality like? And then there's the X factor. Do they have that special something that sets them apart from other waifus and husbandos they are competing against? Now, if all of our choices meet all of those criteria, then my first tiebreaker was to go to Patreon and see who got the most Patreon votes, and that would be my tiebreaker. You think that would be enough, but in some cases, that wasn't even enough. So the second tiebreaker, if that failed, was personal preference. So a couple of these I did have to pull out personal preference on because the tiebreaker with the Patreon votes wasn't enough. But again, this is all just like any award show, hugely subjective. So I hope y'all enjoy this. This was so much fun to go through and see the top nominations for the top waifu and top husbando of 2022. So we're gonna party like it's 2002. But let's do ladies first, and we're gonna start narrowing down our top 64 waifu nominations for 2022 down to our top 32. Let's do this. So, one of our top seeds in this entire business was Yona of the Dawn, and she got faced up against Pakanoda from Hunter x Hunter. I feel bad because I like Pakanoda a lot, and I was really glad she got some votes on here. But if we look at our categories here, and again, I'm going to also be in all of these categories as spoiler-free as possible. I'm not going to dive too much into the plots of the stories these characters are from. One, because I want you to go watch these series because they're all great. But two, I don't want to be spoilery. So, if you don't know these characters, I'm going to be just as bare bones as possible at this point, especially since this is round one. We're just narrowing down the top choices down to the next level. So, as far as attractiveness goes, I will argue that both Yona and Pakanoda are attractive. I could see some people may think that Pakanoda's nose is maybe a little bit more obtuse. We'll get to Annie Leonhardt later a bit because I think her and Annie look very similar. But objectively, they're both very attractive characters. Pakanoda showing much more skin than our girl Yona, but, you know, flaunt it if you got it. But they both meet the attractive criteria. As far as loyalty and love, even though Pakanoda is working for the Phantom Troop and with Crollo, I would argue that Pakanoda is a loyal character, and she does have love in her, the capacity to love. And then Yona, of course, definitely has the capacity too, so they meet both criteria there. From here, it gets a little bit more skewed towards Yona, who is going to be our winner of round one. Yona, as far as stability, yeah, she may be in a precarious situation where she's possibly on the run, but she's also not working with a literal phantom troop of possible criminals and terrorists. So, you know, there's that to look forward to. And as far as personality goes, Pakanoda is more of a side character in the story. She's not a central character, whereas Yona is the protagonist of her series. So we get more personality with Yona. And as far as the X factor goes, I do like Pakanoda's ability in Hunter x Hunter a lot. I think it's very cool. It's very interesting how it's used in the story. But Yona, she's like a badass princess who goes through all this growth and development. Her being the protagonist of her story definitely elevates her over Pakanoda. So round one goes to our girl Yona. Yona of the Dawn wins round one of our waifu contest. Round two, this one's interesting because it's Peak from Attack on Titan and Rin from Fruits Basket. And some of these choices, I was so happy to see them on this nomination poll, but I'll be honest, I haven't read Fruits Basket in over a decade. And I purposefully haven't watched the anime because I'd like to go back and eventually watch it on my channel. So I didn't want to read any spoilers. So a lot of these choices are based on what I know and remember, and some I had to actually look up because I haven't seen that series in a long time. But as far as attractiveness, Peak and Rin, both very attractive characters. They check off the boxes instantly. I mean, this should be pretty much a given. As far as love and loyalty, yeah, both really loyal characters that have a lot of affection for the people that they care about and show it throughout the series they're involved in. Neither have stability. I put down that neither are stable. No, Peak definitely not in the world that she's in, and Rin, with all the trauma that she's endured throughout her series, not a lot of stability there. I would argue they both have very, very good personalities, and personalities that you can relate to and get behind as far as characters go. But then there's the X factor. I'm not going to spoil Peak's character if you've not watched Attack on Titan, but she's kind of got the X factor a little bit over Rin. So as much as I like Rin, this was really hard. And I even wrote on here, there is a spoiler, and if you can guess the spoiler, I did not choose these categories. These were based on y'all's votes on how these were organized. So there's that. But if y'all get the joke, you can comment down below and spoiler tag it. But, So based on the factor of the X Factor, Peak wins out in this round. Peak is going to win round 2 of our waifus. Everybody simps for Peak. I'm just going to say that. Once you watch Attack on Titan, you'll simp for Peak too. But I feel bad because I really like Rin's character as well. Round 3 is Maca versus Ochako. Maca being from Soul Eater and Ochako being from My Hero Academia. Man, this is hard because it's like a throwback shonen from the early 2000s and a modern shonen. Both attractive. I mean, let's be honest. And then loyalty and love, both very loyal protagonists. They're actually, Maca is the main protagonist of Soul Eater, and Ochako is one of the main characters of My Hero Academia, which is more of an ensemble cast. You could argue that Deku is the protagonist of that series. Both loyal characters who have a lot of love and compassion for their fellow comrades in each series. Ochako and Maca, as far as stability goes, that's a tough call. And I want to be slightly biased and say that in the My Hero Academia world, even though they're superheroes and they're constantly faced with the threat of villains, it's kind of part of the inherent structure of that society, and villain attacks happen all the time. So it's expected. But then you look at Soul Eater and you're like, well, Soul Eater has a bunch of instability too with everything going on there, but you're like, that's part of the world too. So it's kind of apples and oranges. So I really couldn't go off of that. And then they both have great personalities. They both have a great X factor with their ability and their weapons. So it's really difficult. And I ended up having to go to Patreon to see who was going to be the winner. And unfortunately, in that, the winner based on the votes was Ochako. So, sorry, Maca! But Ochako wins out on the votes for the waifu poll here. But it was really close between those two. Round 4 was Violet Evergarden and Yachty from Haikyuu. I feel really bad because I like Yachty from Haikyuu, but Violet Evergarden is amazing. But I wanted to be unbiased, and so both attractive characters, both loving, loyal. You'll find out that most of the waifus that were nominated on here are very loving and loyal, and so that box is checked off rather easily. With the Husbandos, not so much. But Violet, Yachty, both loving, loyal characters. Both have technically pretty stable lives. They both have steady jobs. They have careers. They have a good support system around them. Personality, both is great. It came down to the X Factor, and as much as I love my girl Yachty, Violet Evergarden, girl is badass, a trained soldier, but also a girl that can write letters and make you cry buckets. It's Violet Evergarden. She wins round 4. So then we have Machi and Faye. Oh, Machi and Faye, 2 throwbacks. We have Machi from Hunter x Hunter, and we have Faye from Cowboy Bebop. Oh, this one was actually really difficult when you get down to the unbiased, because on the surface, I mean, Faye and Machi, both attractive characters. I love both of them in each of the series that they're involved in. They're both badass. They both have awesome personalities. Stability, none in either of their lives. Nope. Neither have stability. And then as far as loyalty and love, though, you could argue that Faye and Machi have it. They have it and they don't have it. And without spoiling anything, that's all I can really say, is that they have and don't have stability. It depends on their friend circle and who they're loyal to. So it comes down to the X factor. And I love Faye. She's great. Faye Valentine is wonderful. But she, as far as having like a special ability or something that sets her apart from just a standard waifu character, Machi has a badass ability. And you're going to find that in this category for the X Factor, the badass ability or something that really sets them apart, Machi is pretty awesome in that regard. So it's really close, but based on that special ability, Machi's going to win out as our winner of this round, of round 5. So then we have round 6, which is Haruhi from Ouran High School Host Club and Froppy from My Hero Academia. This was really sad. And really, really difficult because both are attractive, both are loyal and loving, both technically have stability within their world set up, both have great personalities, and I know that I'm going to sound hypocritical by saying that Haruhi has an X factor when I just said Faye Valentine did not have an X factor. But Haruhi's our protagonist, and she has like an entire support system and a reverse harem with her. That's a pretty big X factor. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, what about Faye? Just let me be. And then there's Froppy, who has the X factor of her ability. So this is a really hard choice, and it came down to the Patreon votes to determine who the winner of this was. And the winner by Patreon default was Haruhi from Ouran High School Host Club. So, going to round 7, we have Kanroji Mitsuri from Demon Slayer and Midnight from My Hero Academia. Oh. So, here's the thing about Demon Slayer. I have not watched season 2, so there are some nominees on here that I'm only basing my vote on season 1 and what I know. So if we come back and do this again next year and they're on the poll again, my view of them may be totally different based on what we know about them from season 2. So just keep that in mind. But we have Mitsuri and Midnight, both attractive, loyal characters with great personalities and awesome X Factor abilities. So it really comes down to stability. Again, in the My Hero Academia world, the society itself is structured around the idea of heroes and villains, and it's almost like a 9-to-5 job. So there is some stability there, even though it seems kind of crazy. In the world of Demon Slayer, it's sort of the same, but it's a little bit more chaotic. So again, it was really, really difficult. So I had to go to Patreon to see who I was going to vote for in this. And as it turns out, the winner by default based on votes is Mitsuri from Demon Slayer. So Mitsuri is our winner of round 7. So round 8 is Zenmaki from Jujutsu Kaisen versus Haru from Beastars. Oh, I've only watched season 1 of Beastars. I watched it before I started this channel, so I love Haru a lot. Haru is a great character, but Zenmaki, y'all. Zenmaki! So to be fair, though, going through the rubric, both attractive, loyal characters, great personalities, but as far as stability goes, yeah, you could argue the Jujutsu Kaisen world is a little bit unstable, but Haru is constantly attacked by predators, so that's unstable for her as well. So it really comes down to the X factor, and as much as I love my girl Haru, Zenmaki being a total, unequivocal badass, and just trying to be a clan leader and doing all the things, it had to be Maki for this round. She wins round 8. Round 9 is, again, one of our top seeds, which is Mikasa Ackerman from Attack on Titan, and Haruko Haruhara from Fooly Cooly. Haruko from Fooly Cooly. Oh my god, I'm so glad she got votes. She's such a chaotic force of nature. I haven't watched Fooly Cooly in forever, and so getting to research her again, I was like, oh yeah. But I mean, while both they are attractive, Haruko is very chaotic, and from what I remember of her, she is compassionate, but she is kind of chaotic neutral, right? Both of them are in sort of unstable situations, so that part's kind of out there. They both have great personalities. They're very different personalities, total opposite ends of the spectrum, but still really good personalities that you can relate to as an audience member. So it comes down to the X factor. And as much as I love a girl wielding a intergalactic alien guitar, Mikasa Ackerman, y'all. Girl just has like all of it going on. She is waifu material, so it had to be Mikasa Ackerman to win round 9. Now, speaking of waifu material, holy cow, round 10 is Robin from One Piece. I'm glad we got some One Piece representation in this. And Haruno Sakura. Two of the big three from my childhood getting brought up in this. Robin and Sakura. What a match. From Naruto and One Piece. Holy crap. So, both really attractive characters, super loyal, super fiercely loyal to their comrades, and the Nakama. Awesome personalities. They both have an X factor. Their worlds are both in equal terms of instability and stability. So what do we do? So I had to go to the Patreon votes. They were tied. So this came down to personal preference. And I'm sorry, Sakura fans, but I'm a huge Robin fan. So I'm sorry, but Robin is just, she's brains, she's brawn, she's compassion, she's just like a fierce character, and she's one that you just root for from her backstory all the way up through the current arc that One Piece is in. And Sakura, I love you, girl, but Robin had to win this one. If I was a character in One Piece, I would probably be Robin. So the odds were stacked against Sakura when this round was decided. So tough call, but Robin gets out of round 10. So then we have, this is interesting, and I'm probably not going to have a lot of friends over this one, but Annie Leonhardt and Sailor Pluto. Okay. Both extremely attractive characters. As far as stability goes, I would argue Sailor Pluto's in a much more stable world. At least she's the guardian of freaking time. So yeah, she can control time. She's in a stable environment. Both have great personalities. As far as loyalty and love, this is where it gets a little complicated. I said most waifus in this category have loyalty and love. Annie, I can't spoil anything for those in Attack on Titan, but Annie's character, she does have loyalty and love, but I feel like it's a much more fragile sense, and that's without spoiling anything, whereas Sailor Pluto is clearly devoted to the people around her, whereas Annie's character, her loyalties and compassion are often not as vividly cemented, and so it gets a little questionable there. And then, yeah, you have the X Factor. You have Annie's X Factor, which I won't spoil for anybody. And then you have, obviously, Sailor Pluto. But here's the thing. Sailor Pluto's the guardian of time. She's got a lot of things, and so I'm probably not going to make a lot of friends with this choice, but I had to give it to Sailor Pluto. I had to give it to our girl, because she kind of combines all the factors together and just cements them a little bit more than Annie. So hashtag tears for Annie Leonhardt, but Sailor Pluto makes it out of round 11. So then we have two characters that are from series that I have not watched in a very long time. We have Kashima from Nozaki-kun, and we have Cornelia from Code Geass. Throwbacks. Oh my gosh. Obviously, both attractive characters, both showing love and loyalty towards their comrades, towards their family and friends, both having great personalities. Here's the problem. You have Kashima, who is in a much more stable environment than Cornelia, and you have the X Factor that kind of goes towards Cornelia. So what do we do? So I ended up having to go to Patreon to decide this round, and the overwhelming vote was Kashima to be out Cornelia for round 12. So, getting back to My Hero Academia and Attack on Titan, we have Historia and Mount Lady, our Battle of the Blondes, our Titanic Battle of the Blondes. Holy crap. This one was actually really hard because I like Historia a lot and I like Mount Lady a lot in My Hero Academia. So this definitely had to come down to the Patreon votes because you have Historia, Mount Lady, both really attractive characters, both super supportive and loving of their comrades and family and friends. You have both of them in stable and unstable environments. Yeah, you could probably argue that Mount Lady's environment is maybe a little bit more stable than Historia's. You could argue that definitely. Both have great personalities. Both have an amazing X Factor. So it came down to the Patreon votes. And for that, it was Historia. Historia barely edges out Mount Lady in our waifu poll to win round 13. So then we have round 14, which is Ray from Ace of the Diamond. So glad she gets represented in this. So glad. And then Mel Medarda from Arcane. And I'm glad that I'm actually doing this now because before I didn't really know some characteristics of these characters. Both beautiful characters, loyal characters, especially towards their causes in both series. Both in equally stable. I would say Ray's probably in the more stable environment because she has a steady job. She's not constantly being threatened by possible impending war. Seems like a more stable thing than Mel. Both having great personalities. Now Mel, I will edge out that Mel has the X factor in the fact that she's a boss woman who is really, really awesome. She's super powerful. She's strong. She's smart. And she has a lot of great characteristics too. So it got down, it was really, really difficult because I would argue that you have Ray with the more stable environment than Mel, but you have Mel with the X Factor. They have all the other categories. So I unfortunately had to go to Patreon for this to edge it out. And by a very big margin, Ray won out this poll from Mel. So I'm sorry, Mel, my girl, but if you're on the poll next year, the odds will probably be ever in your favor. I'm sorry, girl. And then we have Hasegawa, Nanako, and Gin from Bungo Stray Dogs. Nanako from Skate the Infinity. Okay. I mean, waifus, right? She's a literal waifu. She's probably one of the only actual waifus on this poll, which is kind of hilarious. Both attractive, great, both loving, loyal characters towards their friends and family. I would argue that Nanako is from a much more stable environment than Gin, who has to constantly fight for her life, but it's fine. She's got a good support network, got her brother. Both have great personalities, and yeah, Gin has an X factor in that she's a badass assassin, but Nanako is Longa's mom, so here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. On the one hand, Gin is a badass ninja warrior. On the other hand, if you were Gin's partner, you would have to deal with Octagawa. That's a lot. If you're Nanako's partner, you have an amazing son and a wonderful support system. So it balances itself out, right? So I had to go to Patreon again, and y'all aren't going to believe this, but Nanako, or maybe you will because you voted for her, Nanako had more votes on Patreon than Gin. So, based on not having to deal with Octagawa, her brother, and based on the Patreon votes, Nanako, waifu, mom of the year, gets to go next in round 15. You all are probably hating me at this point for how this poll is going. I'm sorry. Just wait till we get the Husbandos. And then round 16 was Zhang Yanley from Modao Zushi versus Jessie from Pokemon. I didn't make these up. I didn't organize these myself. These are based on the votes, darn it. This one got me really good. I have all categories are checked for both of them. Because they're both attractive. They're both loyal to their friends and family. They both have stable environments. You could argue that they're unstable in certain ways. Again, no spoilers. This is without spoilers. They both have great personalities, and they both, have that X factor. Yanley has her get along soup, and Jessie has a giant snake Pokemon. So, but here's the thing. Here is the thing that separates the X factor. Even though I love Jessie to pieces, she's part of my childhood nostalgia. I have to be unbiased in this. And Zhang Yanley not only has the get along soup, but she's also amazing. And she also brings people together and has so much going for her character. And she has so many badass moments throughout the series and plus I also went on Patreon and everybody voted for Yanley. So Yanley wins this poll, y'all. She's making it into the top 16, into the top 32, maybe the top 16. We'll see how that all plays out. Then round 17, again, one of our number one seeds, Nobara from Jujutsu Kaisen versus Kase-san from Kase-san Morning Glories. Kase-san, my girl, you just got dealt a poor hand. Because both attractive characters, both very loving and compassionate, both with great stability around them, comparative to their worlds. Personality factor's awesome. You could argue that Kase-san's world is much more stable than Nobara's, but the X factor, y'all. Nobara is brains, she's beauty, she's brawn. She puts it all together in a total package. I had to go with Nobara for this one. Round 18 is another old school round. We're taking it back, y'all. Mia Armstrong from Full Metal Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and Rukia from Bleach. Oh my gosh. Y'all know these are two series that I love and have a interesting relationship with. So we have two amazingly attractive characters, loyal to a fault, compassionate to a fault, both in worlds that are fraught with instability, but also they are well in control of their worlds too, both with amazing personalities and both with awesome X Factor abilities. But to be fair, Rukia has a bit of an edge over Mira. As much as I love my girl Mira, the Armstrong beauty herself, Rukia is she's classy, she's sophisticated, she's a leader, she has an amazing ability, and she has a great backstory with her family, with Kaien, with everything, it had to be Rukia. Rukia's getting to the next round. She's our winner of round 18. So then we have Kyoko from Haikyuu and Euphemia from Code Geass. Okay. So this was very interesting too, because from totally different worlds, you could argue that Euphemia has the less stable environment than Kyoko, obviously, because Kyoko's in a very realistic world. But Euphemia also has a pretty good X factor as well. It's very, very difficult, to be honest. And I don't want to spoil, because kind of the deciding factor in all of this is based on a spoiler. So I am going to spoil this one. So I'm going to have to put a spoiler in this. So just note, if you don't want Code Geass spoilers, ignore this little bip here. And if you don't want Haikyuu spoilers, avoid the bip here. So basically, if you don't want spoilers, just avoid this for the next 30 seconds. All right. But here's the thing. It got really close between Kyoko and Euphemia. It was equal votes on Patreon. So here's the deal. This is a waifu competition. Kyoko gets married in Haikyuu and Euphemia dies. So that's what I had to do. So because of those factors, Kyoko wins. She's going on to the next round. I'm sorry, Euphemia. I feel really bad for the Code Geass fans because it's not y'all. It's just the round. But next up in round 20, we have Winching versus Sailor Uranus. Sailor Uranus. It's hard because you have two fierce, beautiful women that are just badass in their own right. And so both attractive, loyal to a fault, coming from very similar worlds that are fraught with chaos, but still they find stability within them, both with amazing personalities and both with the X factor of just one being an amazing surgeon and one having the power of a planet. So, you know, as much as I like the power of the planet, if I was really sick, I'd kind of want Winching to help save me. So there's that. So it came down to Patreon on this one, and unfortunately, the Sailor Scouts won one round, but Winching won round 20 of this with Patreon votes. So Winching, she's advancing on, and we're going to round 21, which is Koyo Ozaki versus Gigan from Yona of the Dawn. Two badass women. I love that they're older women in each of their series, even though Koyo is not that old. They're both the elder, the auntie figures in both series. I like how it worked out that they were in a round against each other. Both beautiful women, as our Green Dragon would note. Both with lots of love and loyalty towards their family, whether it's the Port Mafia or whether it's Pirate Crew. Both from equally unstable worlds. You could argue that both their worlds are unstable in different means, but they have a support system in place despite this instability. Both with amazing personalities. So it honestly comes down to the X factor, and I love Gigan to pieces. She's an amazing character in Yona of the Dawn. I love her, but Koyo, with that damn sword, she kind of she's a cut above the rest in this round and ends up winning the round to go on to the top 32. That leads us to round 22, which is Psycho from Haikyuu, Psycho and Arisa Haiba from Haikyuu. We had a Haikyuu matchup. I'm so excited by this. Psycho and Arisa, two gorgeous women in their own rights, with fierce loyalty towards their family and their teams in Haikyuu, both from equally stable worlds, both with amazing personalities. So it comes down to that X factor. And you know what? I love Arisa. She's great. But you know what she doesn't do? She doesn't play the drums, bitches. And Psycho does. Psycho is our drum playing girl, our badass woman. And so she has to take this round just by the X factor alone. I love my girl Psycho. Taurus unites, right? Just worked out in this round. Round 23 is Hanji Zoe versus Katlia from Violet Evergarden. Hanji Zoe being from Attack on Titan, and Katlia from Violet Evergarden. Both beautiful, beautiful individuals with fierce loyalty. You could argue that Katlia is from a much more stable environment than Hanji. You could argue that she wins that round. Both with amazing personalities. But I would give Hanji the X factor because Hanji is in a higher up position in the military in Attack on Titan and is super smart and super passionate about her interests. Not that Katlia is not, but I think Hanji has a little bit more of the X factor than Katlia. So it came down to Patreon for this one because it was very, very close. Both expert waifu material, but according to Patreon, Hanji Zoe wins out this round to advance on into the top 32. So then we have round 24, and this is going to be an Attack on Titan spoiler. So if you are not wanting to be spoiled with Attack on Titan, just please note that it is a spoiler. So you might just want to skip on to the next, you might want to skip on to round 25. But round 24 is Freckled Ymir versus Ah-Ching, or Jing from Modao Zushi. Both beautiful women, both kind of spry and spunky and just kind of like dry-witted and just really kind of like sources of snark and awesomeness in each series. I love both of these characters. The worlds that they live in are equally unstable, you could argue. They both have amazing personalities, so it comes down to the X factor. And while I love Ah-Ching, I think she's an amazing character in Modao Zushi, our girl Ymir, she's got an X factor. Not gonna spoil y'all, but y'all know if you know. And so she's just awesome, and she wins this round. So then we go to round 25, which is Yasuno, our final number 1 seed. Yasuno from Bungo Stray Dogs, and VV from Code Geass. This was a vote. I have to put it on here. It was one of our nominations. So VV and Yasuno. VV, my waifu nominee. Attractive, yes, but it was an overwhelming victory for Yasuno, who is just a much more developed character with so much passion and loyalty towards their comrades. From despite the chaos, a more stable world with an amazing personality and a badass ability as an X Factor, it had to be Asano. So, to all the Code Geass folks, you will get retribution, I promise. Just hold on, clutch your pearls for just a few more minutes. Round 26 was Miwa Kasumi versus Mirko from My Hero Academia. Holy cow, this may be the most hard round for me to talk about in this first section of the waifus, because I love Miwa. Miwa, I so spiritually connect to useless Miwa. She's amazing, but Mirko's such a damn badass. They're both beautiful characters. They're so opposites, right? They're different kinds of waifus, and that's what makes it difficult. They're both beautiful. They're both fiercely loyal. They both come from equally stable and unstable worlds. They both have amazing personalities, and they both have awesome abilities. So what do? We had to go to Patreon. Well, here's the problem. Their votes are the same on Patreon. So, what do I do? So it comes down to these two characters, and it's very, very hard. But I had to go with a character that I think presents themselves at this point in the series, from what I've seen, with a little bit more confidence. Confidence is key, y'all. And I love my girl Miwa, and maybe once I see season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen, my views will change of her. But until that day, and I don't want spoilers, it's gonna have to go to Mirko, our fierce girl. She is just barely tops over our Miwa for waifu material to win round 26 to move on and advance. So then, round 27, Sasha Browse from Attack on Titan versus Conan from Naruto. This is so funny because there is a waifu nomination in Conan, and at the same time, there is a Husbando nomination that is also from Naruto, and they're two of my favorite characters from both series. So you clearly have telepathically linked up with me to know who my favorite characters of these series are, because I love Conan. She's great. But she's against Sasha Browse. So two beautiful women who show love and loyalty throughout both of the series that they are in, both from very unstable worlds, and both with amazing personalities, and both with an X factor that's really freaking cool. So what do? We have to poll Patreon. So it was a tough call, but by one vote, Sasha Browse, my girl, beats out Conan. So Sasha Browse wins round 27. Round 28 is CC or C2 from Code Geass versus Nanaba from Attack on Titan. I will not hear that I am biased towards Attack on Titan characters, because CC is going to win out this round. I like CC a lot from Code Geass. They're both beautiful characters. They're both loyal, both from stable and unstable worlds, but they both have good personalities, but CC just has that X factor. She's just got that main character flair, and she's just such a more developed character than Nanaba. is that it has to go to her. So Cece Code Geass wins out the round to advance onto the top 32. And then we have round 29, which is Matsuoka Go from Free versus Fuyumi Todoroki from My Hero Academia. I love both these girls. Y'all, this is not easy. So both are beautiful characters that love their family and friends. They both come from stable environments. They both have great personalities. It's just, what do we do? I went to the poll on Patreon because I had to. They both, it's weird picking out X Factor. You could argue that Fuyumi has like from a quirk family, and you could argue that Matsuoka Go is from, has her, fetish with muscles. They're not really X Factors for either. So I went to Patreon 1. The Patreon poll had Matsuoka Go winning. But I will also argue Go winning for this X Factor. And this is a big X Factor. Go's brother is Rin, Matsuoka from Free, y'all. And I know what you're saying, but Romania, these are Fuyumi's brothers. They're also hot. And I would say yes, very true. So if we have hot brothers on both sides, what do we do? Well, then we look at the dads. And so this is Go's dad, and this is Fuyumi's dad. It's going to go to Go. It's going to go to Go. She's going to win this round and advance on the top 32. That's just how we're doing this. And so then we have round 30, which is Riza Hawkeye versus Hanajima from Fruits Basket. And again, what a mismatched pair. I love Hanajima from Fruits Basket, and I love Riza too. You could argue they're both beautiful, loyal characters who come with amazing personalities, and you could argue that Hanajima has a more stable environment than Riza Hawkeye. I will not argue with that. But Riza, the X factor of our girl, the loyalty, the compassion, the fierceness, the romance with Roy Mustang, damn it. It had to be Riza. Sorry, Hanajima, but Riza Hawkeye, she's so badass. She advanced on in the waifu category to our top 32. And then we have, again, a cool balance of old school versus new school. We have Nami from One Piece and Shinobu for Demon Slayer. And I love this matchup because it's like your old school top 3 versus kind of your new school top 3 sort of situation. Both beautiful characters who are loyal, who have amazing X Factor abilities. Their personalities are awesome. They both come from unstable worlds. So what do we do? Well, we ended up going to Patreon and the poll was tied. So had to go with personal preference. And to be honest, the only reason that the personal preference went out for this character is because I have not seen season 2 of Demon Slayer. I don't want to be spoiled, but I haven't watched it yet. So I have been watching and keeping up with One Piece for nearly 20 years. So I have much more material to go on with Nami. So because of the more familiarity tied to her, Nami's going to advance to the next round to the top 32. But Shinobu, girl, come back next year. You may be advancing as well. It was just a really, really hard matchup. And then our final round to submit our top 32 for our waifu chart this year is Yaruichi from Bleach versus Uo from Fruits Basket. Man, two badass women. I feel bad for Fruits Basket because, y'all, this is really hard. Because they were both really, really good characters and they were awesome waifu material. But Yaruichi, y'all, when you see the word waifu, a lot of people think of Yaruichi. Both characters beautiful, both with great personalities, both from, you could argue that Uo has a more stable home life and environment, both loyal, loving characters, but the X factor on Yaruichi, y'all, the X factor in Yaruichi is just enough to send her over the top. So that is our top 32 waifus now, narrowed down from 64. And so I am going to change up the rubric just a little bit from now. This rubric for the top 64 was just to weed out characters and kind of submit, because I figured the top 64 was going to be hard. It was going to be hard to narrow down to 32 based on just this first round alone. And it really was. But I'm going to revamp the rubric going forward with the top 32 to the top 16 and on. So it's going to get a little bit more complicated and a little bit more specific in later videos. So while I'm trying to keep this video as spoiler free as possible, there may be spoilers come up in future videos when we start getting to the nitty gritty of characters. So just keep that in mind. But we're getting pretty general and broad for this first category. So those are our waifus. That only took me an hour to get through. And I know what you're thinking. Wow, that was kind of some hard choices. Surely the Husbandos won't be any more difficult. Y'all made this hard. Really hard. This wasn't any easier. This was actually a lot harder. So we have our top 64 Husbandos of 2021 to 2022 based off of the anime, manga, donghua, manhwa that I've watched and read. And this was hard. We had a lot of nominations. We had so many nominations. 3 flash rounds, and then we had a final flash round to narrow down the last spot. And when I get to that last spot, it's going to be great. I'm so excited to talk to you all about it. But the Husbando choices, I feel like with the first round of waifus, I was like, okay, some tough decisions had to be made. Y'all, this was torture. Torture, narrowing down 64 to 32. I had to have this rubric. If I didn't have this rubric, and it's the most broad, subjective rubric of all, but if I didn't have it, I don't know what I would have done. So luckily, a lot of my personal Husbando choices are not on this bracket. So the personal bias was not crazy, but this 5 rubric is just for this first bracket. When we get down to the more narrowed down choices, like the top 16 on, then it's going to get a lot more complicated, and I'm not looking forward to that. So, but let's get through our top 64 Husbandos and narrow it down to 32. We should just start there. And some of these are pretty easy. Some of them, not so much. It's funny, I was on Twitter the other day, and a tweet from an episode of Naruto came up, and it was a scene with Shikamaru, and I love Shikamaru. He's one of my favorites. He's just a great character all around, but damn it, I didn't choose these categories. These were based on the Patreon votes. And poor Shikamaru getting stuck up next to Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen in the first round. Why? Because Gojo was our top seed for Husbandos from the Patreon votes. Surprising no one, probably. But Gojo was our top seed against Shikamaru from Naruto. I'm so sorry, my dude. It actually was a lot closer than I thought, because both attractive characters, both loyal to an extent with the characterization. Again, I'm only going off of season 1 of Jujutsu Kaisen. Both with amazing personalities, and both from pretty unstable environments. They're kind of on equal footing there. So it came down to that X factor, and I love my boy Shikamaru to death, but it had to go out to Gojo for this. Like, just the cockiness, the power, everything. Again, I'm going to try to be as non-spoilery in this first video as possible when we narrow down our broad choices, but it had to be Gojo. So in another poll, my dude Shikamaru, I would be rooting for you so hard, but it is not this poll. So Gojo advances from our first round. And then we have Miyuki from Ace of the Diamond and Onosaku from Bungo Stray Dogs. Guys, this was absolutely torturous, because I don't know if you can see back there on that shelf. There. I'm trying to find it. I don't know if y'all can see back there, but that's an Onosaku mug. He's one of my favorites. I love Onosaku. My heart, this matchup between Miyuki and Onosaku, it tortured me. My soul was crushing, because I like both these characters, and they're both attractive. They both are loving, like, loyal characters to their comrades. You could argue Miyuki comes from a much stable environment than Onosaku. Onosaku's living his life as a hired gun. You could argue that. They both have amazing personalities, and then Onosaku has the X factor, so it's like, what do we do? So I had to rely on Patreon. I just had to. And y'all, there were more votes for Miyuki Kazuya from Ace of the Diamond than there were for Onosaku. The tears. I need to collect my tears in my Husbando cup there and just let them flow. So do not say that I was biased in this video, because Onosaku did not make it out of the first round. My heart, it's broken. So Miyuki wins and advances on to the next round. So speaking of voice actors at play, we have voice actors playing Gojo, and Miyuki's voice actor plays Geto from Jujutsu Kaisen, so that's a fun time. We also have Kuru. Kuro. Kuro versus Sheena from Yona of the Dawn. So Kuro from IQ versus Sheena. Oh my gosh. An absolute cinnamon stick versus a cinnamon roll. It's hard. They're both attractive. They're both loyal. I would say Kuro has the more stable position. No spoilers, but he just does. They both have amazing personality, and they have Sheena with the X Factor. So again, with this, you're going to find out that a lot of these husbandos, I had to rely on Patreon as a tiebreaker because I was like, no, there's just no way. And so Kuro had the definite votes in this from IQ. He was like one of our top husbando nominees, so he advances on the round. I'm sorry, Sheena. Retribution for the Yona of the Dawn men. Don't worry, you shall be avenged. But it had to go to Kuro in this first round. Then we have Jishin from Odazushi versus Longa from Skate the Infinity. My heart. My heart. How dare this bracket be this way? They're both beautiful men who are loyal and loving. They come from stable home environments, possibly bougie, and they have great personalities. And God, I love Longa, but Jishin has the X factor on this one. He's a cultivator. He has a hot brother. He has a hot brother. If Longa wasn't an only child and had a hot sibling, then this would have been really, really hard. But Jishin, I mean, he's a total package. He gets this round. He advances on to the next round from round one. Then we have a throwback. We have Sebastian from Black Butler, and we have Giyu from Demon Slayer. What a interesting, we have the Demon and the Demon Slayer, which is a fun time. Both attractive. Here's the thing, though. We're also going to find most of the waifus are very loyal characters. They're all women and waifu nominees that have solid characteristics of being loyal and devoted to their partners. Or would-be partners, depending on how you ship them. With the husbandos, it gets a little gray with some nominees, and I'm like, will we call them loyal? And you could argue that Sebastian is loyal to CL based on their contract, and you can argue that changes perhaps over time. Again, no spoilers, but I don't quite think his loyalty is on the same level as Giyu's. And they both come from pretty unstable environments. They both have amazing personalities. They both have great X factors. But in the end, I have to say, as much, again, this is not personal preference. This is just as being as unbiased as possible based on the criteria. I'm going to have to give the edge to Giyu, even though my heart is saying that Sebastian is a pretty damn good husbando. But based on the criteria I've set forth in this first round, Giyu from Demon Slayer advances to the next round. And if you hate me for that decision, I hate myself too for it. So here we are. The next round. You all chose this based on your votes. I couldn't make this up if I tried. Hawk and Suwon from Yona of the Dawn. What? What? We're having this now in the first round in the top 64, the top 32. What? I ended up having to go to Patreon for this because they're both attractive. And I'm obviously only going by what I've watched in the anime, but from what we've seen, you could argue the Hawk is the more loyal one from what we've seen from the anime so far of the two, but you could also argue that Suwon is in the more stable environment because he's the king of the entire kingdom right now, so there's a give and take there. They both have amazing personalities, and they both have great X factors, so it was too close. I had to go with Patreon, and the overwhelming winner on Patreon was Hawk from Yona of the Dawn, but it was close! I was like, ooh, personal preference would be for Hawk, but I went with Patreon, and he was the winner, advancing to the next round. But I can't believe that they were against each other in the very first round. We'll see how it is next year, but crazy talk. The next round is Roy Mustang versus Uzui Tengen. Roy Mustang from our old school Full Metal Alchemist, and Tengen from Demon Slayer. Now, this gets a little bit more complicated because, again, I've only seen season 1 of Demon Slayer, so I can only go off of what I know. And a lot of people voted for Roy, and a lot of people voted for Tengen, so it was really difficult. But I had to go with what I know currently. Now, I'm going to watch season 2 of Demon Slayer this year, hopefully. So that may change if Tengen's on the poll next year. My view may totally be skewed, and y'all are probably sitting there biting your nails going, yep. But based on what I know, we have two very attractive guys who both seem very loyal and loving of their partners and comrades. They're both from equally unstable, stable environments. They both have an amazing personality, and they both have the X factor tied to them. So because of that, I had to go onto Patreon and see who won the poll. And Roy Mustang had one more vote than Tengen. So based on Patreon default, Roy wins out this poll for this round. Next, we have Wei Wuxian from Odazushi versus Joe from Skate the Infinity. What a matchup. What a matchup. I'm sorry, Skate the Infinity fans. It was both hot guys that are extremely loyal to their companions, vary from both equally stable environments, you could argue. I think Joe's might be a little bit more stable. Both with amazing personalities. And then, yeah, you could argue that Joe's abs are an X factor. I wouldn't argue that. And then Wuxian has obvious X factors as well. So I had to go to Patreon, and the overwhelming winner when it came down to that was Wuxian from Odazushi. So I love you, Joe. Matcha Blossom forever, but Wuxian wins out this current round, advance to the top 32. So then we have our next number one seed. Gojo was our first number one seed. Our next number one seed is Dazai from Bungo Stray Dogs versus Victor from Arcane. I love both of these characters. So again, what can we do? Both attractive, both showing similar love and companionship towards their partners. You could argue Victor and Dazai from equally stable and unstable worlds, both with a great personality. The thing about Victor is an Arcane, again, no spoilers, but I feel like Victor's character, for the X Factor, we don't have enough on Victor's character yet. And with Dazai, the X Factor is there. Let's be real. So it had to be Dazai in this first round. But our Victor boy, he gave him a hard-earned fight, but Dazai had to win out for this round to advance to the top 32. Next round, Shoto Todoroki and another Victor from Yuri on Ice. Victors all around. This Victor is a little bit different, though. And so with Shoto Todoroki and Victor, both surprisingly are icy boys making it into this round. Again, I did not pick these matchups. They're based on the votes and seeding from NCAA standards, so this is what we ended up with. Both attractive guys, super loyal and compassionate, both from stable environments. Personality was a factor, and then you had your X factor in that Shoto Todoroki, obviously, he has his quirk, and Victor from Yuri on Ice is Victor from Yuri on Ice. It's enough of a Husbando X factor. I'm sorry. So here's the thing, though. Going to the votes on Patreon, it gets really close. It gets super close because they both have basically the same votes on Patreon. But I will argue this, and this is the only reason, so it comes down to personal preference. I love my boy Shoto. I do. But if it's coming down to Husbando and I have to choose between the two of them, Victor has no family drama. So if I have to choose between the two of them, Victor from Yuri on Ice has no family drama and Shoto has quite a lot. So if I'm picking a Husbando choice and it's coming down to personal preference and there are two that are so freaking close, I have to get nitpicky, and Victor from Yuri on Ice, that whole no family drama, it goes a long way. So Todoroki fans, I'm with you. My heart is with you. But Victor from Yuri on Ice, he wins out this round to advance to the top 32. The next round, we have, God, we have Makoto from Free versus Armin from Attack on Titan. My favorites. This is so hard. This was ridiculous. I'm glad I used the rubric because ridiculous. Again, Patreon poll. They're both hot. They're both loyal. They both have, you could argue that Makoto has the more stable environment. I will give you that. But Armin has the freaking X factor. Yes, you can do the back muscles on Makoto. I'm not going to argue that either. And then there's the personality. So I had to go to Patreon just to solidify it. I was leaning Makoto, and I was leaning towards Makoto, but I had to go to Patreon, and Patreon had Makoto beating out Armin too. So Armin, my dude, you're one of my favorites in Attack on Titan, but I had to go to Makoto. Tears. Which, why am I saying tears? I'm happy Makoto's going forward, so, but I'm sad for Armin. So, Armin fans, my heart's with y'all. Speaking of Attack on Titan, the next round is Eren versus Yuki from Ace of the Diamond. What a weird matchup. What a very weird matchup. They're both hot. It's fine. I'm going to use the current Eren for this. They're both loyal, compassionate characters to an extent that we know of. That care about their friends. That definitely care about their friends and family, for sure. We can argue that. Yuki is obviously from the more stable environment than Eren. Obviously. They both have very intriguing husbando personalities. But Eren has the X factor too. So, again, turning to Patreon, Eren wins out this based on popularity. So sorry, Yuki, but Eren Yeager is going to advance to the next round. Now, where we go from there, we shall see. So then we have Zhang Cheng from Modao Zushi and Oizumi Hajiami from Haikyuu. What a matchup. Again, so Zhang Cheng and Oizumi, both very attractive characters, super loyal to their family and friends. They both are from interestingly stable environments. They have great personalities. And then it's like X Factor. Obviously, Zhang Cheng has Zidian. Such a badass weapon of choice. And then you have Oizumi, who I can't get into the X Factor because of spoilers, so I won't. But if you watch Haikyuu and you've read the manga, y'all know what I'm talking about. So I had to go to Patreon again. And they had Zhang Cheng winning out over Oizumi. So Zhang Cheng from Modao Zushi is advancing on to the top 32. Going back to Attack on Titan God, the rounds, y'all, are ridiculous. Erwin Smith from Attack on Titan and Tamaki from Ouran High School Host Club. The Battle of the Blondes. The Battle of the Blondes, y'all. Y'all know where this is headed. You should know. I love my boy Tamaki, and I love my boy Erwin. They're both very attractive. They're both super loyal, very compassionate characters. Tamaki obviously has the more stable life. The boy is bougie as all get out. Totally stable. Much more stability than Erwin Smith, who could, go at any moment. And then personality-wise, you have one of the most amazing commanders and captains in Attack on Titan versus our prince. So then it comes down to the X Factor. It's got to be Erwin for the X Factor. I love my boy Tamaki, but Erwin has so much going for him and is just so badass. It's like, yeah, okay. So I had to go to Patreon again. And I sound like a broken record, but Erwin won out the votes on Patreon, so he's going to advance over our boy Tamaki into the top 32. But this is hard. There are so many. Tamaki, Otasaku, Shoto. There's so many that I'm like, I wanted you to advance, and they just aren't, and it's so frustrating. So it's only going to get worse from here, y'all. It's only going to get worse from here. Next round is Lu Guang from Link Click and Kyo from Fruits Basket. The Fruits Basket enthusiasts shall get their retribution here because I love my boy Lu from Link Click. I love him. Him and Kyo, they're beautiful boys. They're super loyal. They both have great personalities. They both have interesting X factors to them. But it all came down to the stability. And without spoiling anything, Kyo has more stability. So he is going to end up winning out this poll. And I will also argue that I have, from reading the manga for Fruits Basket many moons ago, I do have more of a developed understanding of Kyo's character, whereas Lu, we've only had him for one season of Link Click. Again, season 2 of Link Click is coming out this year. If Lu's back on the poll next year and against somebody else, could be a totally different outcome. But Kyo from Fruits Basket, he's going to advance to the top 32 from this round. Next up, we have, again, these rounds, you'll see there, you see on the wall there, I have Spike from Cowboy Bebop against my boy Nanami from Jujutsu Kaisen. What have y'all done? This is such a hard round. They're both so hot, and they're both loyal. And they both come from equally shakeable, unstable backgrounds. And they both have amazing personalities and X factors. It's just, I had to go to Patreon. To keep my bias in check, I went to Patreon to be the tiebreaker because they're both amazing characters in either show. But y'all came out in droves for my boy Nanami. Bless you. He wins this round. Spike, I love you. Just, my cowboy, but Nanami wins out this round to advance to the top 32. So then we have the next number 1 seed versus the number 16 seed. you would think this would be an easy round of Levi Ackerman versus Fat Gum from My Hero Academia. You'd think this would be an easy round, but I was being as unbiased as possible. I was being as fair and objective as I could be, so I went through this criteria. And here's the thing. Levi, attractive. Fat Gum, when he's in his, like, you could argue Fat Gum is attractive in either of his forms. I will not judge anybody. Personal preference, right? So, attractive. Both extremely loyal characters. They're extremely compassionate towards their comrades and their partners. Absolutely. They're both from unstable environments. Again, we've talked about My Hero Academia and, like, in the society, it's considered stable, but what have you. Their personalities are great. And they both have an X factor. So what do we do? So I had to go to Patreon, and I apologize for going to them so much, but this Husbando bracket is insanity. So I had to go to Patreon, and obviously, being the number 1 seed, Levi won. But Fat Gum, of all characters, gave him a run. Much more than I thought he would going into this. I looked at that bracket, and I was like, Fat Gum versus Levi? This won't be hard. And then the more I thought about it and actually broke it down, no, Fat Gum is a really good Husbando choice, but sadly, he does not beat out Levi in this poll. So, next we have Mikashiba from Nozaki-kun versus Akashi from Haikyuu. Again, some amazing characters. Both attractive characters, super loyal, from both stable environments. Surprisingly, some of the few Husbando choices that have a good stability factor to them. Both with great personalities, but here's the thing. And I'm sorry to all my Nozaki-kun enthusiasts, but Akashi, without spoiling anything, is tied to Bokuto from Fukurodani. And the fact that he knows all these various volleyball teams, the fact that he's tied to Bokuto, I won't go into spoilers, but if you know Haikyuu the manga, you know the spoilers, you know why it has to be Akashi. And he has to tie up and win this round to advance to the top 32. So Akashi wins. Next, speaking of Haikyuu, we have Oikawa Toro versus Hirano from Sasaki and Miyano. This was such a tragic matchup because I like Hirano a lot from Sasaki to Miyano, and I love my boy Oikawa. I love him. So I kept my personal preference aside as much as I could. They're both attractive characters. They're both fiercely loyal. They have good stability. They have great personality, but my boy Oikawa has that X factor. All the moments from Haikyuu where he's done so many badass plays, where he's had so many great character moments. And it's just a shame because all I know of Hirano is from the 6 or 7 episodes of Sasaki and Miyano that I've watched so far. If I read the manga and got more into Hirano's character, it could be a different story, but I gotta let my boy Oikawa move on to the next round. It's just, I'm so glad he made it to the top 32. But anyway, next round, Albert Moriarty versus Akihiko from Given. What a matchup. Both very attractive characters, fiercely loyal. Albert comes from, nobility, so he's got some stability in his home life. And then Akihiko, I would argue that is one thing that Albert has over Akihiko, because without Haruki and other characters, Akihiko, his stability is kind of like, he's kind of on the fence in terms of finances sometimes and where he's going to end up, spending the night. So there's that to consider, whereas Albert has a nice plush, nice noble, nice suite that he stays in. They both have amazing personalities, and then you have the X factor, and I would argue both Albert and Akihiko have a great X factor as well, in terms of being a band, being nobility. There's danger tied to both of them. So I had to go to Patreon just to be as unbiased as possible. And Albert Moriarty went out by 1 vote on Patreon to advance to the top 32. But it was super close. It was super close. So then, funny enough, the next round has Albert's brother, William Moriarty, up against Jeha from Yona of the Dawn, my green dragon. So both attractive characters, fiercely loyal towards the people that they care about. Neither from a very stable environment that could be argued, but both with amazing personality. And so it came down to the X factors. And without spoiling anything, it's Jeha. It's our boy. So I will say there are a little bit of Yona spoilers in this inherently, but it's Jeha. He has to win this round. I love William Moriarty. I love Liam to death, but Jeha, our boy, he has to advance to the top 32. And so then we have, oh my dear Chuya. My dear Chuya from Bungo Stray Dogs versus Kuramochi from Ace of the Diamond. What a, Kuramochi, I feel for you, my fellow Taurus, but Chuya. I mean, they're both attractive, both super loyal. Surprisingly from stable environments. I mean, Kuramochi in Ace of the Diamond has a pretty normal, realistic home life. And then you have Chuya, who you would think would be an unstable environment, but it's the Port Mafia. So there's some kind of built-in stability there by being an executive member of that. And then you have both with amazing personalities, and then it's just Chuya's X factor. His ability, his personality, his ties to the other characters. I love Kuramochi to death, but Chuya is just such a total package. He has to advance on to the next round. And then, my boy Sosuke Yamazaki comes in this next round against Hawks from My Hero Academia. I love Hawks. He's hot. He's great. They're both really good looking. They're both fiercely loyal individuals. Obviously, Yamazaki has more stability in his life than old Hawks, who's from the world of My Hero Academia. They both have amazing personalities, and then Hawks does have the X factor. I mean, any character in Free, you can argue, has the X factor, but Hawks especially has the X factor. So it was tied. I had to go to Patreon, and so in going to Patreon, Sosuke Yamazaki, so happy he won out in the votes. So happy that my boy Sosuke is advancing on to the next top 32. But Hawks, you gave it a good run, and like I said, next year, different round, different voting. Hawks could totally pull it off, but today, this was Sosuke Yamazaki's round. So then, my king of Attack on Titan, Jean. Y'all came out and voted for Jean. I'm so happy. Him and Sonata from Ace of the Diamond. The funny thing is, Sonata is voiced by the same voice actor as Levi from Attack on Titan, which is curious. But I feel like Sonata and Jean, in the weirdest of ways, are kind of the same character of each of their series. They're both ridiculously good looking. And they're both fiercely loyal. And they both have amazing personalities. They're very similar personalities, oddly enough. The roles that they have in both stories are similar. You could argue that obviously Sonata has the much more stable life than Jean. But then you have the X Factor. And while Sonata is the ace of Yakushi, and I have to give him that, Jean just brings so much to the table in terms of leadership, in terms of his badassery, in terms of his personality, tying into all of that, and then just all the character moments that he has. I feel like we get a little bit more of Jean in Attack on Titan than we get of Sonata in Ace of the Diamond. So for that reason only, I have to bring Jean above Sonata. And if I had to have gone to Patreon, then Jean would have won out anyway. So Sonata, my dude, I love you, but Jean, my king, is advancing on to the top 32. So, here's the thing. This was the last number one pick. And the number one seed goes against the 16th seed. And this 16th seed was the last one to get picked. And I had to do a bonus poll on Patreon to narrow it down between Senko from Dr. Stone, James from Pokemon, and Inosuke from Demon Slayer. So honorable mentions to Senku and James. Honorable mentions to you two, my dudes, because y'all almost made it into the top 64. But Inosuke won out. And I felt so bad because when I went to plug Inosuke in to my chart, I was like, wow, we had this big poll narrowing it down to Inosuke. Now who's he up against? Oh, Wanji from Modao Sushi. I'm sorry, y'all. Inosuke, very attractive, as is our Lanzan. Very attractive, both fiercely loyal. Obviously from stable and unstable worlds alike. There's their personality, but Wanji, it's just, Wanji has such an X factor. And this is how it breaks down. I mean, as far as Patreon goes, Wanji was the clear winner. But if we're going to break it down fairly, as far as being a husbando and showing a romantic attachment to your partner, Inosuke just doesn't seem that interested. He's not interested in you unless you have like a piece of meat dangling in front of you. Whereas Wanji is like going to be on his hands and knees for you like groveling, like doing ultimate husbando devotion. So for that reason, along with the Patreon votes, it had to be Wanji, but I'm so glad Inosuke made the top 64. It's great, but as soon as I saw that matchup, I laughed out loud for a solid 30 seconds. I was like, of course, we went to all this trouble to pick our final seed, our 64th seat, and it's against Wanji. Seems legit. So next, we have, God, this poll is awful. Because it's so hard. Reiner from Attack on Titan and Yuji Itadori from Jujutsu Kaisen. What? Oh my God. So yeah, it's those two characters. It's those two. They're both attractive. Reiner with that glow up. They're both loyal to the people that they care about. They both are from unstable worlds, so that's equal. They both have great personalities and personalities that you grow with throughout the entire series that you've watched them so far. And they both have a great X factor. So I went to Patreon and they both got equal votes. So it comes down to personal preference. And I was trying to be fair because I love Yuji and I love Reiner. So this was hard. So I tried to decide, okay, what other factors can we go with? And here is my thing. There are two criteria that allow Reiner to win this category. One, Yuji has Sukuna inside of him, and we'll get to Sukuna, don't worry. But Sukuna is inside of him. And if Yuji is the husbando, not Sukuna, if Yuji is the husbando, then Sukuna is a detriment because Sukuna will just muck it up. If you're trying to be with Yuji as a husbando, Sukuna's going to come in and muck it up. And that's not cool. But also, Reiner needs a hug. So, and my final criteria, in all seriousness, is that we do spend a good 4 solid seasons with Reiner as a main character. And right now, I'm only in season 1 with Yuji. So that was another factor as well. I've had more time to know Reiner's character, and I've only known Yuji's character for 1 season. So it was very, very close. The Sukuna factor and the fact that I've known Reiner longer as a character let Reiner edge out this round, but it was hard. I mean, splitting hairs. Again, just like with Hawks, if it had been any other round, I probably would have picked Yuji, but what can we do? But don't worry, we'll get some retribution for that later. So next up, we have Bokuto from Haikyuu versus Haruki from Given. What a matchup. 2 cinnamon buns. One a little bit more cinnamon than the other. Both attractive characters, insanely loyal and devoted to their partners, both with stable lifestyles, both with great personalities, both. I would argue Bokuto has the X factor that he has like a much more vibrant and explosive personality, but then Haruki is so devoted that it's like, it's apples and oranges, right? So I had to go to Patreon for this one. And unfortunately, just like with Haruki's partner Akihiko, Bokuto had more votes on Patreon, so Bokuto is going to advance and move forward. But Haruki and Akihiko, they can be together in the honorable mentions. We'll just say that. Next up, we have Ash Lynx and Ugetsu from Given. Given's one of my favorite BL series, but damn it, this husbando bracket is hard because it's Ash Lynx versus Ugetsu. They're both extremely attractive. I will say with this that Ash Lynx, Ugetsu has loyalty and compassion towards his partner, but from what we've seen of Ugetsu, it's not quite on the same level as Ash Lynx. Definitely not. You could argue that maybe Ugetsu comes from a much more stable environment than Ash, so there's that. They both have very intriguing personalities. And then as far as the X Factor, Ash Lynx is just he's such a badass and such a total package of being a leader, of being charismatic, of having all this big range of emotions. And we see a range of emotions with Ugetsu, but it's just not on the same level as Ash. So I had to go with Ash, and if I had made it go to Patreon, then Ash would have won anyway. So Ash Lynx, as much as I like Ugetsu as a character, and as beautiful as he is, Ash Lynx is going to advance to the next round. Next we have, this is a really funny matchup. It's 2 older characters. We have Aizawa from My Hero Academia, and we have Kazuma from Fruits Basket. It's so funny, this matchup, actually. I wrote down in my notes here, Aizawa loves cats. So does Kazuma. was like, holy shit, what a weird matchup. This is surprisingly interesting. Both have had slightly depressing pasts. No spoilers, but slightly depressing pasts. And both are attractive, fiercely loyal. They come from similarly stable environments. They have great personalities. It's so hard between the two of them. So I had to go to Patreon to pick the winner. And by one vote, it was Aizawa. So Kazuma, I love him. And I love Aizawa too. So y'all, Patreon, the Husbando bracket, Patreon was the deciding factor on so many of these because it was just too close. I had to rely on y'all's votes to determine who would be going into the next round. Speaking of next rounds, when I said that the Husbando brackets, some of the categories are not quite as even as the waifus, we have Megumi from Jujutsu Kaisen versus Hisoka for Hunter x Hunter. I get why Hisoka's on here as a Husbando. I do, in the weirdest of ways. I get it. Now, why Crollo's not on here? Okay. But, and why, like, some of these other Hunter x Hunter characters are not on here for Husbandos? Okay. But Hisoka somehow made it. And yeah, Hisoka and Megumi, very attractive characters. But love and loyalty, Hisoka is kind of like not really loyal to anyone. So he's not really quite Husbando material as far as that is concerned compared to Megumi. Both from unstable environments. They both have amazing personalities and they both have incredible X factors. But if we're going on Husbandos here, Hisoka is not exactly going to be loyal and devoted to his partner. He's probably going to try to trip you up and will possibly kill you at any moment. So, had to go to Megumi for this round to advance to the next round for the top 32. Speaking of Jujutsu Kaisen, and this is when I told y'all about Yuji. If you're trying to be a Husbando with Yuji, then Sukuna is a detriment. But if you're trying to have your Husbando be Sukuna, then it's a little bit different. So, Sukuna versus Cherry from Skate are two pink-haired boys matching up against one another. Both fiercely attractive, both with great personalities. Cherry is perhaps from the more stable environment, and you could argue that Cherry is maybe the more loyal of the two, the more fiercely compassionate and loyal. I think of Sukuna. Sukuna is devoted to keeping Yuji complacent inside of him. I don't know. This is really hard. This was hard as well because then you have the X factor, okay? And here's the X factor. Yeah, in terms of stability, yeah, Cherry is a much more stable environment than Sukuna. And you could argue that maybe Cherry is more loyal and compassionate than Sukuna. But the X factor with Sukuna, here's the deal. You have obviously the X factors that he possesses, but then you also have the fact that Yuji's inside of him. So it's like you get a bonus. It's like Yuji, you have Yuji along with Sukuna. So this is really hard. Again, they're such polar opposites. And I wanted to pick Cherry, but I was like, am I picking Cherry because of my own personal bias? Or am I picking Sukuna for my own personal bias? So I couldn't decide. And I finally had to go to Patreon and be like, Patreon, help me, please. And the overwhelming winner for this round, based on Patreon votes, was Sukuna. Now, you could make the argument that it's kind of the same thing like Hisoka, and Megumi beat out Hisoka, but I would argue that Sukuna, if you compared Sukuna and Hisoka from the last round, Sukuna at least shows interest and is loyal in his word, right? He keeps his word in that when people get on his bad side and he's like, I'm going to wreck you if you do this, he stays true to it. Hisoka, you can't really trust. Is he going to keep his word? Is he going to go back on it? Sukuna has a little bit more loyalty to his word than Hisoka does, so that's my rationale in terms of that. And just the Patreon votes had to decide that factor, much like with Megumi. So then, next round, I'm so glad that my boy Haiji made the top 64. I'm so glad my boy Haiji made it from Run with the Wind. Of course he's up against Zeno. They're our last two in this bracket. And you have Zeno the Yellow Dragon and you have Haiji from Run with the Wind. Very close. Both are attractive. Both seem very loyal. You know Haiji's very loyal. And from what we've seen of Zeno so far in Yona of the Dawn, he seems very loyal as well. Both, Haiji's from a much more stable environment. than Zeno, but Zeno right now is in a pretty good place. And then both have amazing personalities, and then Zeno has the X factor. He's a literal dragon. Let's be real. So it's interesting. I went to Patreon first, and obviously Patreon had High-G winning out this round. And I will argue that I would go with High-G as well, because technically at this point in the series, we just know more about High-G in terms of where I am with Yona of the Dawn. I know more about High-G and Run with the Wind. I've seen that series all the way through. I know very little about Zeno. Now, again, come back next year if Zeno is back on this poll and I know more from the manga about Zeno, it will probably be a totally different ballgame. But from what I know right now, I have to go with my knowledge of the series and Patreon and the categories. And for that reason, it's going to be High-G advancing to the top 32. Even though I love my boy Zeno already. But, so yeah. I probably have made many enemies based on this. But this was so much harder than I created this monster. I set out with the intention to do a top 64 single elimination round with waifus and husbandos, and here we are. So we're down to the top 32 each. So I'm going to go back, completely revamp the rubric. It's going to get a little bit more specific now. We've narrowed down our options to the next level. So we've gone from being very broad criteria in the rubric. We're going to start getting more specific as we go. So I hope that y'all enjoyed this. I've had so much fun with this so far, but picking the winners of these top 64 into 32 was torture. And I know especially for the husbandos, it's only going to get worse from here. So y'all get to watch me unravel in my madness and torture myself going through these brackets. It's March Madness. It's insanity. What else did we expect? But I hope that your favorites made it into the top 32. It's going to be exciting going on to the next round. So the next video, I'm going to do the top 32 to the top 16 and the top 16 to the top 8 for our husbandos and waifus. It's going to get interesting, y'all, and I'm pretty excited. So I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction, this video, this reaction to my madness. So I hope y'all enjoyed this video as we narrow down these choices of the top husbando and waifus of 2021 to 2022 based on the shows that I've seen so far. If you have any comments down below, please feel free to comment. Please tag spoilers. But in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, things are going to get crazy. We're going to come back and do the top 32 down to the top 8 husbandos and waifus, and I look forward to seeing y'all then. Bye.